Hey, brothers and sisters, Dustin Segers here. I want to talk to you today. I've seen a string of articles about pastors committing suicide here lately. There was just recently the story that went viral on Facebook talking about a pastor that was a megachurch pastor that committed suicide. His father had died the year before. He also ran into a series of health problems that were pretty extensive shortly thereafter. And then eventually, here recently, he just took his life. There's a couple of things I want to say about this. The first thing is this. Nowhere in the New Testament do you see anything like what we call megachurches today. There really isn't anything like that. You do see a huge church in Jerusalem. What a lot of people don't understand is that that's a ton of Christians who were meeting in individual house churches. When you read the book of Acts, and it talks about the so-called Jerusalem Council, the apostles and the elders, those are elders of those local churches, those local house churches, came together to consider the issue at hand. There was a plurality of elders, not only throughout the city, but also they would have elders in each individual house church. And some of these house churches only had maybe 15, 20 people in them at the most. These were mostly peasants. Now, as we get out into larger cities, more wealthy cities, some of those house churches would have sometimes 60 plus people in them because they met in the wealthy members' homes and they had a huge courtyard, and that's fine. But the idea of primarily most of the preaching and teaching load, most of the so-called vision that's being set or cast by the leadership, laying on the shoulders of primarily one man, God never intended for that kind of responsibility to lay primarily on the shoulders of one person. We are not designed to handle that. And the reason why some pastors are committing suicide is, number one, they're absolutely plagued by the demonic. Absolutely. We need to be praying for our pastors, loving our pastors, elders, overseers, caring for them. The second thing is, most churches today do not have a true functional plurality of elders. Some of you listening to this may say, what is a plurality of elders? When you look in the New Testament, the words elder, pastor, and overseer are three terms that are interchangeable in the New Testament. You look in Philippians 1:1, it says, to the bishops and deacons, or literally to the overseers and deacons. You look in Titus chapter 1, verses 5 and following, it talks about how go and appoint elders in every city as I directed you. The overseer or the bishop must be the husband of one wife. The words overseer or bishop and elder, those two terms are interchangeable, indicating the same function within the body. Okay, the same person, the same dude. And then the word pastor is just the noun for shepherd. And Peter tells the elders in 1 Peter 5 to shepherd, to poimen, that's the verb form, the flock of God. And he says he was a fellow elder alongside them. The word pastor teacher, or pastors and teachers, in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 12, is one of those functions that are given in the body to equip the saints to do the work of ministry. That word pastors, teachers, that's not talking about two separate functions or two separate people. That's talking about the same person. It should be hyphen in the Greek. It's called a Granville-Sharp construction. Check it out. Look it up online. That indicates the same person, pastors/teachers. That's not some special guy like John MacArthur and then there's all the elders under him. No, pastor teachers is every elder. Every elder, pastor, overseer should be able to teach and then meet the character qualifications of 1 Timothy 3 and Titus 1. Those guys are to share the load of ministering to the body together. They're to bear that load together. There's no indication that only primarily one man should be preaching/teaching the body all the time. Now, there can be an extended period of time that he can do that. That's fine. He may have a series that he wants to work through or a book that he wants to teach through. But the problem is when you have kind of the modern pastor model, it turns it into a job and a career where this guy's got to perform all the time. So he's being attacked by the devil relentlessly. which involves stress out the wazoo, depression, discouragement, despondency. He's not only fighting devils, he's also fighting wicked people. And Christians who are weak and tossed here and there by every wind of doctrine. And he's got this weight laying on his shoulders. God never intended for pastors to go it alone like that. You say, well, my church has a plurality of elders. Yes, but do they share teaching responsibilities? Or is there primarily one guy almost all the time standing in front of you, and is he kind of your pastor of vision? He's basically your expositor. The other guys really don't teach. That's not biblical. That's not biblical. They need to be sharing the teaching load. They need to be sharing the shepherding load. That's biblical. You say, well, give me some evidence. Well, I've already given you some scriptural evidence. When you look in Acts 14, verse 23, it says, Paul called to him the elders, plural, of the church at Ephesus. Those are pastors. Elders, pastors, overseers. Terms are used interchangeably in the New Testament. Acts chapter 20, verse 28, Paul says to the Ephesian elders, same group of people, shepherd the flock of God among you, exercising oversight. The word shepherd there, again, the verb for to pastor. Shepherd the flock of God, pastor the flock of God, which is among you, exercising oversight, okay? That is the verb form of the word episkopos, where we get the word overseer or bishop from. That's also a pastor. So pastors, elders, overseers, pastors, bishops, overseers. It all refers to the same person in the New Testament. And according to the New Testament, if you have men in your local assembly, your local church, that meet the character qualifications of 1 Timothy 3 and Titus 1, those men ought to be allowed and appointed, not ordained. It's not this elaborate ceremony that you go through, but they need to be publicly recognized as shepherds. They have the gift of shepherding. They have a teaching skill. They have a desire to shepherd people's hearts, to shepherd the flock of God. They ought to be appointed, publicly recognized through the laying on of hands, and they ought to be able to shepherd alongside all the other pastors. You see, when you spread that load out, it takes all the burden and responsibility off of primarily one guy. Again, study the scriptures. Be good Bereans and see whether these things are so. If you're a pastor, you're a deacon, you're listening to this, ask yourself a question. Why do you continue to follow unbiblical standards and unbiblical practices that are putting an unnecessary yoke on your shoulders and the shoulders of your pastor that God never intended for him to bear? So I want to encourage you to think about this. I say this in love. I'm not being ugly. I'm not trying to be ugly. I want you to receive what I'm saying in love. Study the scriptures that I mentioned. Look at them. Look at them in context, in the literary context, and then study some good evangelical, conservative, scholarly commentaries and see what they say. And what you'll find is that what I'm saying is exactly right. I also want to encourage you to read a book called Biblical Eldership. Biblical Eldership by Alexander Strauch. Another great book you can read, and you can go to ntrf.org, New Testament Reformation Fellowship, ntrf.org. It's edited by Steve Atkerson. It's called New Testament Church Dynamics. I encourage you to read that book. It is excellent. God bless you guys. I hope this has been encouragement to you. Take care.